Give me. Hey everyone. Thanks so much for working with me today on on the videos. Not the videos. Jeez. Yeah. All right. It's getting late. If you can't tell, what I want to do right now is I want to go over one of the scenarios for this week to help you understand it and to maybe help you write your SOAP narrative effectively and better. And so what I've done for you today is written up a few things. And this is all going to go on the content section on D2L. I believe it's under scenarios or simulations. I forget what folder I put in there. For real, let's see. No, I want to go. Okay, let's see if I can flip between my screens, because if I can't, I got to start this all over again. Okay, let's see if this works. So what I've done, we're going to go over the scenario. Hey, it's working. Nice. Here's the scenario we're going to go over. And it's the stable MVA. This is what Angela just gave me this week. And this is the one we're doing. This is the one I did today with a bunch of you. It's a slow speed accident, single vehicle into a parked car. Now, the patient's stable. You can see right here it says stable. So the patient's stable. Now, in relating to this, we don't ever want to go into a scene assuming anything. Besides that, we're there to assess the patient and to help the patient make a good decision for him or herself, right? That's our job. We're not there to assume that every patient needs to be transported code 3 to the hospital. It's not true. So our job is to assess patients. So let's assess this person. So we're dispatched code 3 to a single vehicle accident. That's all you're going to get, all right? And so when you start this scenario, you're going to say, okay, BSI is my scene safe. We all learned this today because, God, I forget who couldn't do it. Well, someone couldn't. And I gave them a hard time. Oh, yeah, another thing that I did today, or tonight, is I wrote up a very clear, very stripped down SOAP format. Kind of bare bones skeleton of how you'd write a SOAP narrative. Not your drop down boxes, not all that stuff. Just the SOAP narrative itself. And I've made it very simple. You want an introduction. You get your subjective information there. You get your objective. Sorry for the sniffles. Okay, just finished sniffling. That shouldn't be a problem anymore. We have our objective, which is what we see, right? So subjective is what the patient's going to tell you, what they feel, how they feel. And objective is going to be what you observe in that patient. So, yeah, and I've got it listed here, and these all represent a point under that trauma assessment. Let's see if I can pull that up. There it is. Under this trauma assessment, right? These are all points. Basically, in this format, your introduction is your scene size up and your general impression of the patient. That's what that is. And you just kind of work through it. Subjective is what the patient's saying, and objective is what you find in your primary assessment. That's what the word. All right. So let's talk about this call. Your dispatch BSI scene safe. A big aspect of this call, and calls like it, any traumas that you go on, is you need to do an assessment, your own assessment of the mechanism of injury. And that's a big thing for this patient. This patient was involved in a car accident, single vehicle accident. That's all we know. And a lot of times when we're dispatched to a call, that's all you're going to get. And we don't need anything more than that. A lot of people get really frustrated when they don't get a lot of information on their way to a call. It's part of what we do, right? No big deal. We don't need extra information in order for us to do our job effectively. But one of the things that we forget to do, and that I ran in with a lot of the people that worked with me today, was I want you to do a further assessment, kind of your own assessment, an individual assessment of the mechanism of injury itself. So in this case, it's a car accident, right? So it's not enough just to say, well, what's my mechanism of injury? And they'll say, well, you got a single vehicle accident. And you'll say, oh, and they'll go, okay, well, I'm going to consider taking the C-spine, number of patients, all that stuff. No, you got to assess the mechanism. And again, this is assessing how all the energy during this impact could potentially be affecting your patient's body, right? And so we have to assess the level of that mechanism. And whenever I assess a car accident scene, I always start from the outside and I go in, right? So I always look at the exterior of the car. We take into consideration the environment that we're in. So one of the big things is the speed of the impact. Now, in this scenario, they're at Highway 61 and 96 up in White Bear Lake, and that's pretty fast speeds, but according to this scenario, the patient was going only 10 miles an hour. How that works, I have no idea, but that's what the scenario is. So in my report, I'd say we were on the highway, but in my narrative, I would write as well that the patient reports that they were only going about 10 miles an hour. You can still get hurt at slow speeds. Don't let the speed itself rule out the severity of the mechanism of injury, right? Other things from the external standpoint would be the damage to the vehicle. Where on the vehicle is the vehicle damaged? Where did the impact occur? And how severe is the damage, right? We think of what did the vehicle hit when it impacted. This is a single speed or a single vehicle accident. Well, what did we hit? Well, it turns out they hit a parked car, all right? So that's important. That's a pretty solid object. It'd be different if they hit a giant fluffy pillow, right? That might be a bit different. And then we work internally into the inside of the car. So things like, was the airbag deployed? Is there an airbag present and was it deployed? Did the patient wear their seatbelt? Is there signs of damage to the internal areas of the vehicle? Like the steering wheel, the dash, down by the knees or on the side. The windshield, is it starred? All of these will help you determine the level of the severity of the mechanism of injury. How much energy could have potentially affected this person's body, right? So then we get to the subjective and objective. I'll let you read this. One of the important things I wanted to point out from today was when you ask questions of the level of consciousness and their behavior. I always put behavior there, and I've said that so many times. If the person is alert and oriented, times 4. If they're there and with it, you just say it A&O times 4. If the patient is alert but confused, I want you to specify what they're confused to. What are they confused about? I had a patient 2 days ago who couldn't follow our directions very well. When we asked her to close her eyes and keep her eyes closed, she couldn't do it. She just nodded and like, yeah, I can do that. I'm like, okay, can you close your eyes, please? Because we were going to do a stroke assessment on her. And she wouldn't close her eyes. In fact, she acted like we had no idea what we were asking her. Then when I started into do you know what day it is? Yeah, of course I know what day it is. And she couldn't answer. She said she knew, but she couldn't know. Then I asked her stuff like, do you know where you are right now? She couldn't tell me where she was. Then I went even deeper. I wanted to know how far this went. I asked her if she knew what state she was in. She couldn't tell me the state. I asked her what country she was in. She couldn't tell me the country. And then I asked her what planet she lived on. And I wasn't making fun of her. I'm not teasing her. I never tease patients like that. I wanted to really see if she knew or didn't know. And she was truly confused. I ended up calling the hospital and requesting a stroke alert for her, just so I could get a red room and a doctor there. So in my narrative, I wrote about what she was confused about. If they're not alert, it's not enough just to say that the patient's not alert. I had someone today, I forget who it was. They're like, okay, so the patient's unconscious but alert. They said that and they listened to themselves. If they're not alert, I want you to say the patient is unconscious. That's fine, unconscious, but is initially unconscious and responds to what level of stimulus and how do they respond to that, right? Very important. So the patient responds to verbal stimulus by opening their eyes and talking, or by groaning, or by furrowing their brow. Patient is alert, or a patient responds to painful stimulus by rolling over, or by pushing you away, or taking a swing, whatever it is. Describe what they respond to and how they respond. And then you can read down and go through all of this by yourself if you'd like. I'm not sure if your actual physical assessment is required in your SOAP formats for your narrative on FISDAP. If it is, this is how you can put it. Very simple. All right? And then we want 2 sets of vitals, their past medical history. I left out the last oral intake, but on this, you should probably add it. And then your plan. This is your treatment plan. You have, and I break it down into 3 or 4 categories. This is your on-scene treatment and how the patient responds to your treatment. Always describe how they respond. Always describe how you move the patient to the ambulance. You don't just move them. Describe how. Stair chair, did you carry them? Did you assist them? Did they walk by themselves? And then you have in transport or in the ambulance during transport treatment and how they respond to that. And then I always end it with upon arrival. Whenever I write my narratives, it's always upon arrival. Patient is transferred to ER room 2 and care is transferred to the ER-RN or the ER-MD, whatever you want to say. That's how I end that. Okay, that kind of relates it a little bit, especially with the assessing the mechanism of injury. What I did for you, and I'm not going to read through it, you can read through it if you'd like, is I typed up this whole scenario as if I were running it on the actual scene, right? I tried to relate it to how you would speak during the test, during the trauma assessment. What would it sound like? And during the assessment or during your test, you're going to be speaking directly to the tester. Just like if I run you through a scenario, if we ever get that far, because I have a habit of talking too much. I want you to treat the tester. I want you to treat your instructor like the patient, okay? So if you have a question to ask me directly. I want to hear how you're going to say it. And what I've done is I've written this up kind of like how it would be if we actually truly had this interaction. And this is based on my own experience. I've been doing this for about 10 years. And this is pretty much how it would go on this type of accident, on this actual, on this scenario right here. This is how I would speak to this patient. And so I've written it up. Where'd it go? There it is. You, the EMT, are in normal typing. The patient or the tester, one and the same, is in bold italicized. And where it gets to the part where you're actually asking questions, I've put you in quotes. And I've also put your patient in quotes. And again, the patient would be me. If I was testing you, it would be me. So this is what I would say, and this is how I would respond. I tried to make it sound very similar to what it would sound like on an actual call, not just some canned response that you might get in some made-up scenario, right? So I've written that out for you, and it seems like a lot, but if you break it down, I've tried to organize it for you, which we have the scene size up right here. Then I go into the primary assessment, down to our transport decision right there. Got your secondary assessment, your vitals. Here's some vitals, just one set. You can make up the other set, and then a transport decision. And this guy actually refuses transport, and that's fine. So I've written that down. Here he's signing the refusal. And then at the very end, I've added my own narrative. If I had this call, and I've had this call before, not this exact one, obviously, because Angela just made this up. But keep in mind, me, Angela, and Dave are out there running calls, doing our job. I'm going tomorrow. This is how I would write it. It's exactly how. All right? So take a look at that, relate it back to this template right here, and these are all in the same area on D2L. And I hope this really helps. I hope this provides some direction for this patient and this scenario. And if it does help, I'll do this for everyone. I might not write it out completely like this, because this took me over, about an hour. Which, I don't know, I can do that. But anyways, let me know if this helps. And yeah, I hope it does. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later. Bye.